On the eve of our Aspen wedding, my fiancé Julian brought his ex-girlfriend into our penthouse and calmly told me I'd be sleeping in the guest room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched him stand there in the doorway at 9:17 p.m., one hand holding his phone and the other resting on the handle of her suitcase. The woman beside him was elegant, dark hair, expensive coat. She looked at me like she'd been expecting this moment. Julian cleared his throat. "This is Celeste Rowan." She smiled. "Marielle." She knew my name. That bothered me more than anything else. I looked at Julian and asked the only question that mattered. "Who is she?" His answer was so casual I almost didn't process it. "She's staying here tonight." I waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. He gestured toward the hallway. "You can take the guest room. The wedding's tomorrow. I don't want a scene." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 200 guests were already at the resort. My dress was hanging in the closet 15 feet away. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m., and Julian had just brought another woman into our bedroom. I opened my mouth to ask if he'd lost his mind. Then I saw his phone light up on the marble countertop. A message. 3 words, visible for just a second before he turned the screen face down. She signed nothing. My chest went cold. This wasn't about Celeste. This wasn't about jealousy or some last-minute emotional crisis. Something much bigger was happening. I looked at Julian's face, really looked, and realized he wasn't uncomfortable. He was watching me. Waiting for me to react, waiting for me to break. I didn't. I walked into the bedroom, past Celeste, past the woman who had just been given my space like it was nothing. I pulled my phone from my purse and my hands were steady. Julian thought he was in control of this moment. He thought he knew exactly how this would go. He didn't know I'd spent the last 2 weeks wondering why someone had accessed my company's financial records without permission. He didn't know I'd already started asking questions, and he definitely didn't know that the person I was about to call had been waiting for me to give her a reason to dig deeper. I closed the door. Then I dialed Nadia. She answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" My voice didn't shake. "I need you to find out everything you can about Celeste Rowan, everything, and I need it by tomorrow morning." There was a pause. "Marielle, what did he do?" I looked at the wedding dress hanging in the closet. "He brought her here, to our penthouse, the night before the wedding." Nadia exhaled slowly. "And you're still going through with it?" I stared at the closed door. On the other side, I could hear Julian and Celeste talking in low voices. "No," I said. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. The wedding wasn't happening, but Julian didn't know that yet. If you've ever felt the ground disappear beneath you the moment someone you trusted showed you exactly who they really were, then you already know why I couldn't just walk away. Stay with me. Because what I found out next didn't just change the wedding, it changed everything I thought I knew about the last 4 years. And if stories like this remind you that your instincts were right all along, you're in the right place. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. Crying would come later maybe, when I had time to feel everything I was currently refusing to feel. Right now I needed to think. Julian and I had been together for 4 years. From the outside, we looked perfect. He was the polished heir to Voss Meridian Holdings, investment company, offices in 3 countries, the kind of family that made headlines when they attended charity galas. I was different. I'd built my own business from nothing, a boutique property management company that specialized in luxury residences. It wasn't glamorous the way Julian's world was glamorous, but it was mine. 3 clients and a borrowed office had turned into something profitable, something I was proud of. Julian used to say that was what he loved most about me. "You don't need anyone, Marielle." I'd believed him. Now I wondered if that had been his first lie. 3 months ago, Julian asked me to sign a prenuptial agreement. I didn't argue. I understood why wealthy families protected their assets. Then his attorney sent a revised version. There were clauses I didn't understand, legal language about marital contributions and fiduciary responsibilities. One section would have allowed Julian to claim a portion of my company if our marriage ended under certain circumstances. I refused to sign. Julian went quiet for 3 days, not angry, worse, cold. Then he apologized and blamed his father. He insisted on that language. "I'll have them remove it." I wanted to believe him, so I did. 2 weeks ago, I discovered someone had remotely accessed my company's financial records, bank accounts, property contracts, client information. When I asked Julian if he knew anything about it, he looked genuinely surprised. Why would I do that? I didn't have an answer, so I let it go. Now, sitting in the guest room while another woman unpacked in my bedroom, I understood something. Every time I'd felt uncomfortable, I'd talked myself out of it, and every time Julian dismissed my concerns, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Every warning sign I'd ignored, because I wanted the relationship to be real. I pulled up my email and started searching. Contracts, financial statements, anything connected to Julian or his family's company. Then I opened a separate browser and searched for Celeste Rowan. The first result was a LinkedIn profile, former financial controller Voss Meridian Holdings. She'd worked for Julian's family. I clicked through to her employment history. She'd resigned 3 years ago. No explanation, no new position listed after that, just gone. I screenshotted everything. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, Julian's voice low and calm. She'll come around, she always does. I closed the laptop. My hands were still steady, because I'd just realized something that changed everything. Julian hadn't brought Celeste here to hurt me. He'd brought her here because he needed me emotional, unstable, reactive. He needed me to look like someone who couldn't be trusted to make rational decisions, and I suddenly understood exactly why. The prenup, the accessed financial records, the timing. This wasn't about love. It never had been. Julian was planning something, and tomorrow morning I was going to find out exactly what. I didn't sleep. I sat in the guest room with my laptop open, going through 4 years of emails, contracts, and financial records, looking for something I'd missed. Through the door, I could hear Julian and Celeste talking in low voices. I couldn't make out the words, but their tone was familiar, comfortable, like they'd had this conversation before. At one point, Celeste laughed, soft, quiet, like she was sharing a private joke. My stomach turned. Morning came slowly. Outside, I could see cars arriving at the resort below. Guests, family members, people who had flown in from 3 different countries to watch me marry a man I no longer recognized. No one knew the wedding was about to collapse. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Nadia. I answered immediately. Tell me you found something. She didn't waste time. Celeste Rowan, 32, former financial controller for Voss Meridian Holdings. She worked there for 4 years. I sat up straighter. When did she leave? 3 years ago. Official reason, personal resignation. But Marielle, the timing is strange. How? She resigned exactly 6 days after a large transfer was made from one of the company's subsidiary accounts, $2.3 million. My pulse quickened. Where did it go? Nadia hesitated. That's the problem. I can't find it. The trail stops at a private trust. No names attached. Whoever set it up buried it deliberately. I stared at the screen. $2.3 million. A resignation 6 days later. No explanation. Nadia, do you think she stole it? I think someone wanted it to look that way. The pieces weren't connecting yet, but I could feel them starting to move. What else? After she left Voss Meridian, she disappeared for about 18 months. No employment records, no social media. Then she reappeared working for a financial consulting firm in Chicago. Low profile, no public presence. I closed my eyes. Julian had brought her here for a reason. Not because he loved her, not even to humiliate me. He brought her here because she knew something, and he needed to control her, or silence her. Maybe both. I made my decision. Nadia, I'm cancelling the wedding. She didn't argue. Do you want me to come get you? Not yet. I need to tell Julian first. Marielle, be careful. Men like him don't let go easily. I know. I hung up. Then I stood, smoothed my shirt, and opened the door. Julian was in the living room, drinking coffee like it was a normal morning. Celeste was nowhere in sight. He looked up when I walked in. Morning. Did you sleep okay? I didn't sit down. I just said 5 words. The wedding is not happening. Julian didn't panic. He smiled. Then he set his coffee down slowly, like I'd just said something amusing. You're upset, I understand, but don't do something you'll regret. I stayed exactly where I was. I'm not upset, Julian. I'm done. The smile faded. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, a habit he had when he needed to feel in control. Marielle, we have 200 guests arriving today. The resort is booked. Your family is already here. Do you have any idea what cancelling will cost you? I don't care. His jaw tightened. You should. Because you're not just walking away from a wedding. You're walking away from contracts, vendor agreements, deposits you'll never get back. I crossed my arms. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping. My family has attorneys who will make sure you're held accountable for every dollar, breach of contract, reputational damage, and that's just the beginning. I watched him carefully. He wasn't asking why I wanted to cancel. He wasn't hurt. He was calculating. You'll be blacklisted from every professional circle you've worked so hard to be part of, he continued. Your clients will hear about this. Your reputation will be destroyed. I let him finish. Then I asked the question I should have asked 3 months ago. Why did you really want me to sign that prenup? Julian's expression went cold. He didn't answer. I took a step forward. The clause about claiming my company if the marriage ended under certain circumstances. What were you planning, Julian? Still nothing. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Celeste. She was dressed, packed, standing in the hallway with her suitcase like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. I turned to look at her. You knew he was going to do this. Celeste's face was unreadable. I knew he would try. Julian's voice cut through the room. Celeste, stay out of this. But she didn't move. She just looked at me with something I didn't expect. Pity. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small business card. She crossed the room and handed it to me. No name, just a phone number, and 4 words written in neat handwriting. Call me when you're ready. Julian stepped between us. She's not calling you. She's not doing anything. This conversation is over. But Celeste was already walking toward the elevator. She didn't look back. I stood there holding the card, feeling Julian's eyes on me. He thought I was bluffing. He thought I'd break. He thought I needed him more than I needed the truth. He was wrong. I left the penthouse 30 minutes later. Julian tried to stop me. Not physically, but with words, the kind designed to make you doubt yourself. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. You're not thinking clearly. I didn't respond. I just walked past him, carrying the business card Celeste had given me and a suitcase I'd packed in silence. Nadia picked me up outside the resort. She didn't ask questions. She just drove. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Vivian Cross in a quiet office in downtown Denver. Nadia had called ahead. Vivian specialized in corporate litigation, marital asset disputes, and financial fraud. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and she didn't waste time on pleasantries. She looked at the folder I'd brought, prenup, financial records, emails, everything I had on Celeste's background, and asked one question. Do you want to walk away, or do you want to know the truth? I didn't hesitate. I want to know what he was planning to do to me. Vivian nodded once, then she spread the documents across her desk and started reading. For 20 minutes she said nothing. Just turned pages, highlighted sections, made notes in the margins. Finally, she looked up. This prenup isn't designed to protect his assets. I leaned forward. Then what's it for? She pointed to a clause buried in the 3rd section. This language would allow Julian to claim your company was a marital asset if the marriage dissolved due to your breach of fiduciary duty. I don't even understand what that means. It means he was building a legal case to say you were financially irresponsible, reckless, that your business decisions put the marriage at risk. Then he could force a sale of your company's assets to recover damages. My hands went cold. He wanted my company. Not just your company, your properties. Vivian pulled up a separate document on her laptop and turned the screen towards me. 2 years ago, Voss Meridian Holdings tried to purchase 3 luxury properties in Colorado. High value, prime locations, they were outbid. I stared at the list. All 3 properties were currently managed by my company. He didn't fall in love with me. Vivian's voice was steady but not unkind. He saw an opportunity. I sat back in the chair trying to process what I was hearing. 4 years, the proposal, the engagement, the wedding planning. All of it had been a strategy. I wasn't his fiancé, I was a business acquisition. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I opened it. You don't know the real reason Julian needs you to marry him, and if you go to the police, they'll destroy the evidence before you can prove anything. CR. Celeste. I showed the message to Vivian. She read it twice. Then she looked at me. Do you trust her? I don't know, but I think she's the only person who knows what Julian's really planning. If you've ever discovered that someone you loved saw you as nothing more than a deal to close, if you've ever realized that every moment you thought was real was actually calculated, then you understand why I couldn't just walk away and pretend I'd never seen the truth. Stay with me, because what Celeste told me next made me realize Julian hadn't just lied about loving me. He'd done this before. And if you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself and exposing someone who hurt others, subscribe, because you'll understand every decision I made next. I met Celeste at a coffee shop 2 miles from the resort. Vivian warned me not to go alone. Nadia insisted on waiting outside in the car. I walked in at exactly 2 p.m. Celeste was already there, sitting in the back corner. No luggage, different clothes than this morning. She looked up when I sat down. You came. You said I didn't know the real reason Julian wanted to marry me, so tell me. Celeste folded her hands on the table. He brought me to your penthouse last night to humiliate you, but not because he wanted me back. Then why? Because humiliated women make mistakes. Emotional women sign things they shouldn't. Angry women don't read contracts carefully. I felt my jaw tighten. He wanted me unstable. Exactly. He needed witnesses to see you falling apart the night before your wedding. Then, when you signed the revised prenup tomorrow, no one would question it. I already refused to sign. Celeste's expression didn't change. He was going to tell you I threatened to ruin the wedding unless you paid me to leave. He'd already drafted the agreement. You would have signed just to make me go away. I stared at her. Why are you telling me this? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Emails, financial statements, internal memos. She slid it across the table. 3 years ago, I helped Julian hide money. I didn't know what it was for. When I found out, I tried to leave. What happened? He told me if I said anything, he'd make sure I went to prison for fraud. He had documentation, my signature, my access codes, everything he needed to make me look guilty. I opened the folder. The first document was a transfer record. $2.3 million, the same transfer Nadia had found. You didn't steal this. No, but Julian made it look like I did, and he's been holding it over me ever since. I looked up at her. You're not his ex-girlfriend. Celeste's smile was bitter. I was, but that's not why I'm here. She pulled out her phone and showed me 3 photographs. 3 women, 3 different years. All of them professionally successful. You're not the first woman Julian targeted, Marielle. My stomach dropped. How many? You're the 4th. I stared at the photographs on Celeste's phone. 3 women, 3 different years. All of them looked successful, confident, professional, like me. Who are they? Celeste swiped to the first photo. Rebecca Aldrich. She owned a commercial real estate firm in New York. She and Julian dated for 2 years. The relationship ended suddenly. 6 months later, her company dissolved. She swiped to the second. Lauren Petrov, boutique hotel chain, 8 properties across the Southwest. Julian proposed. Wedding was cancelled 3 weeks before the ceremony. She sold her business within a year and moved to Europe. I felt sick. And the third, Celeste locked her phone. Me. The coffee shop felt too small. Too quiet. He's done this before. Not exactly. The first 2 didn't have what he needed. Rebecca's assets were tied up in partnerships. Lauren's hotels were mortgaged. They were useful for a while, but Julian couldn't get full control. And you? I was different. I had access to financial systems, but I didn't own anything. I was just an employee, expendable. Celeste opened the folder and pointed to a document. With you, he found what he'd been looking for. You own the properties his family wants. Outright, no partners, no complications. And you trusted him enough to let him into your business decisions. I thought back to the last 4 years. Casual conversations where Julian had offered advice about acquisitions, suggestions about pricing, questions about client contracts. I thought he was being supportive. He was gathering information. Every word you said, he used. Celeste slid another document toward me. Internal emails between Julian and someone listed only as TV. The subject lines made my stomach turn. Heart property valuations updated. Timeline for engagement, prenup revision strategy. I looked up at her. What's in the rest of this folder? Proof that Julian's been using shell companies to artificially devalue properties before his family makes acquisition offers. If anyone connects the transactions, it's corporate fraud. My hands were shaking now. We can take this to the police. Celeste's expression darkened. There's a problem. What? Some of these documents implicate people who had nothing to do with the scheme. Julian's younger brother signed off on transfers he probably didn't understand. Staff members processed paperwork without knowing what it was for. If you expose everything, innocent people lose their jobs, maybe worse. I sat back. This wasn't just about Julian anymore. So what am I supposed to do? Build a case carefully, prove intent, show the pattern, protect the people who didn't know. I looked at Celeste, this woman who'd walked into my bedroom last night like she belonged there. Now she was sitting across from me, offering evidence that could destroy the man who'd manipulated both of us. Why are you really helping me? What do you want? If you've ever discovered that the person you loved had done the exact same thing to someone else. If you've ever realized you weren't the exception, you were just the next one in line, then you already understand why walking away wasn't enough anymore. I needed to know the truth. All of it. Even the parts that would hurt. Stay with me, because what Celeste told me next made me question everything I thought I knew about trust, and I want to know, would you have believed her? Or would you have walked away? Leave a comment, because I honestly still wonder if I made the right choice. Celeste's answer was simple. I want my life back, and I can't have it while Julian has leverage over me. She leaned forward. Right now, he has documents that make me look guilty. My signature, my access codes. If I go to authorities alone, he'll say I acted independently, that I stole the money and blamed him when I got caught. But if I show the pattern, then my involvement looks like coercion, not conspiracy. I understood. She wasn't helping me out of guilt or friendship. She was helping me because I was her way out. I need to show this to my attorney. Do it. 2 hours later, Vivian was sitting across from both of us in her office, reading through Celeste's documents with the same methodical focus she'd used on mine. She didn't speak for nearly 30 minutes. Finally, she looked up. This is real, and it's worse than we thought. I sat forward. How? Vivian turned her laptop toward us. The shell companies weren't just devaluing properties. They were creating fake debts tied to those properties. Then Julian's family would offer to rescue the owners by purchasing at a loss. She pulled up a timeline. If you had married him and signed that prenup, he could have claimed your company was in financial distress. Then he'd force you to accept his family's buyout offer. My voice came out quieter than I intended. How long has he been planning this? Vivian checked the oldest document in Celeste's folder. 3.5 years. I felt the room tilt. Julian and I started dating 4 years ago. We met at a charity auction. He spilled champagne on my dress. He laughed. He spent 6 months convincing me to give him a chance. I thought it was romance. He targeted me from the beginning. Vivian's expression was careful. It appears that way. I stood up, needing to move, needing air. Celeste stayed silent. Vivian closed the folder. Then my phone rang. Julian. I looked at the screen. Vivian shook her head. Don't answer. But I knew Julian. If I didn't answer, he'd escalate. I picked up. His voice was ice. We need to talk. Now. I met Julian an hour later at the resort lounge. Public, witnesses. Nadia was sitting 3 tables away, pretending to read a book. Julian arrived exactly on time, looking calm, controlled, like this was just another business meeting. He sat down across from me. No apology for Celeste. No mention of the cancelled wedding. Just 4 words. I know you've been talking. I kept my voice steady. I've been talking to lawyers about my company. Celeste contacted you. I didn't confirm or deny. Julian leaned back in his chair. Whatever she told you, she's lying. She's angry because I ended things. She's tried this before, making me look like I used her. His story was smooth, rehearsed. Believable, if you didn't know better. I tested him. Tried what? She was fired for financial misconduct 3 years ago. She's been trying to blame me ever since. It's pathetic, really. If I didn't have the documents, I might have believed him. But I did, and I didn't react. That silence, that's what gave me away. Julian's expression shifted. Just for a second, something cold moved behind his eyes. He tried a different approach. I loved you, Marielle. I still do, but if you try to damage my family's reputation based on lies from a disgruntled ex-employee, you'll lose everything. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. My family has resources you can't imagine. Attorneys who've never lost a case, investigators who can find anything, connections in every industry you work in. I stayed silent. Then Julian played his final card. I know about the loan you took out to expand your company 2 years ago. I know the terms, and I know you're 6 months from a balloon payment you can't afford. My blood went cold, because he was right. The payment was $220,000, due in November. I'd been planning to refinance, but the market had shifted. How do you know about that? Julian smiled. I know everything about you, Marielle. Your business, your debts, your vulnerabilities. He let that sit for a moment. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to marry me, sign the prenup, and I'll make that debt disappear. 1 phone call and it's gone. And if I don't, then I'll make sure every creditor you have calls in their loans at once. Your company will be insolvent within 60 days. I stood up. Julian looked confused. Where are you going? To think about it. I walked away. He didn't know I'd been recording the entire conversation. If you've ever been trapped between doing what's right and protecting everything you've built, if you've ever realized the person who claimed to love you knew exactly how to destroy you, then you understand the choice I was facing. Stay with me, because what I discovered next didn't just reveal how Julian knew about my loan, it revealed who else was involved, and that changed everything. Subscribe if you've ever had to decide whether exposing the truth was worth losing everything, because what happened next almost broke me. Back at Vivian's office, we listened to the recording twice. When it finished, Vivian looked at me. That's coercion, financial blackmail. We can use this. But I was thinking about something else. How did he know about my loan? Those terms aren't public record. Nadia pulled up my company's banking portal on her laptop. It took her less than 10 minutes to find it. Someone accessed your records remotely 4 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. From where? She checked the IP address log, Voss Meridian Holdings. I expected that. What I didn't expect was the username. The login credentials don't belong to Julian. Then who? Nadia turned the screen towards me. T. Voss, Tobias Voss, Julian's younger brother. I'd only met him once, quiet, serious, uncomfortable at the engagement party. He managed the company's tech infrastructure. Celeste confirmed it. Tobias handles all the digital systems, but he's not like Julian. He does what he's told and doesn't ask questions. Vivian looked at me. We could subpoena the access logs, but if we approach him directly, we might get answers faster. It was a risk. If Tobias was loyal to Julian, he'd warn him, but if he wasn't... Nadia found him 2 days later at a coffee shop near his office in Denver. I went alone. Tobias looked up when I sat down. Recognition crossed his face immediately. You're supposed to be on your honeymoon. The wedding didn't happen. He didn't look surprised. Because of Celeste. You knew he was going to bring her. Tobias looked away. I knew he was planning something. I didn't know what. I took a breath. Did you access my company's financial records 4 weeks ago? His face went pale. He told me it was for the prenup attorneys. He said you'd approved it. I didn't. Silence. Tobias stared at his coffee cup. What else has he done? That question, the way he asked it, told me everything. He didn't know. But he suspected. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder Celeste had given me. Emails, financial transfers, shell companies, the timeline document. I slid it across the table. Read this, then decide whose side you're on. Tobias hesitated. Then he opened it. I watched his face change as he turned each page. His hands started shaking. When he reached the document titled Timeline for MH Asset Transfer, he stopped breathing. He looked up at me. Oh my God. His voice was barely a whisper. He's been doing this for years. Tobias didn't just give me files. He gave me Julian's entire plan, written in his own words. It took 72 hours, 3 days of encrypted messages, late-night transfers, and Tobias risking everything his family had built. The first document he sent was an email chain between Julian and his father. Subject line: Heart Acquisition Updated Timeline. I opened it. My hands were shaking. The email was dated 4 months after Julian and I started dating. She's confirmed ownership of all 3 Colorado properties. No partners, no liens. Attachment shows updated valuation. Recommend proceeding to engagement phase by Q2. I read it 3 times, engagement phase, like it was a business milestone. The next document was worse. An internal memo dated 18 months ago, the same week Julian proposed. Timeline for MH asset transfer. It wasn't a love letter, it was a project plan. Phase 1, engagement complete. Phase 2, prenuptial negotiation in progress. Phase 3, marriage ceremony, scheduled. Phase 4, financial destabilization, projected Q4. Phase 5, asset acquisition, target 18 to 24 months post-marriage. I sat in my apartment staring at the screen. The proposal hadn't been romantic. It had been a checkpoint. Every I love you had been strategy. Every moment I thought was real had been calculated. I wasn't his fiancé. I was MH, an asset. A timeline, a target. Nadia found me an hour later, still staring at the document. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just sat down beside me. What do you need? I need Vivian to see this. I'll call her. But before Nadia could pick up her phone, mine rang. Vivian. I answered. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. Marielle, Julian just filed a lawsuit against you. The room tilted. What? He's claiming you defrauded him during wedding planning. Breach of contract, emotional damages, reputational harm. He's demanding full reimbursement of wedding expenses plus compensatory damages. How much? She paused. $340,000. I couldn't breathe. Vivian, I don't have that kind of money. I know, and he knows. That's the point. I looked at the timeline document still glowing on my laptop screen. Phase 4, financial destabilization. Julian wasn't reacting, he was executing. The lawsuit destroyed my life in less than a week. Julian filed in a county where his family had donated to 3 different judges' campaigns. The complaint was 47 pages. Every allegation was designed to make me look unstable, deceptive, manipulative. I'd allegedly lied about my financial situation to secure expensive gifts, misrepresented my intentions to vendors and his family, caused severe emotional distress by cancelling the wedding without warning. He attached evidence, emails where I'd asked about wedding costs, receipts for things he'd paid for, sworn statements from his mother, 2 cousins, and 4 family friends, all claiming I'd seemed erratic and emotionally volatile in the weeks before the ceremony. It was a perfect narrative, and it was entirely false, but the damage was immediate. Julian's attorneys froze our joint wedding account, $43,000 of my money locked pending litigation. Then someone contacted my creditors, anonymous tips about financial irregularities and pending legal judgments. Within 3 days, 2 lenders put my credit lines under review. Then Julian, or someone working for him, started calling my clients. I found out when my longest-standing client, a property owner I'd worked with for 5 years, called to cancel her contract. Marielle, I received some concerning information about your company's stability. I can't afford to take risks right now. What information? I'd rather not say. I'm sorry. She hung up. 2 more clients cancelled that week. I sat in my office looking at the numbers. Operating expenses $31,000 per month. Frozen capital $43,000. Lost monthly revenue $18,000. Balloon payment due November 12th. Amount $220,000. Legal fees accumulating $1,200 per day. I was watching my company die in real time. For the first time since this started, I broke. Not loudly. I just sat at my desk and cried. Because I'd done everything right. I'd built this company from nothing. I'd worked 18-hour days. I'd been careful, strategic, professional, and Julian was going to take it anyway. Not because I'd failed, because I'd succeeded. I called Vivian. My voice was barely steady. What if we settle? Give him something so I can keep the company? Long silence. Is that what you want? I thought about the timeline document. The 3 women before me. Rebecca's bankruptcy. Lauren leaving the country, Celeste still hiding 3 years later. No, I whispered, but I don't know if I can survive this. Vivian's voice was firm. Then we stopped playing his game. What do you mean? Julian's lawsuit is civil. He controls the venue, the narrative, the timeline. He can bleed you dry before we ever get to trial. So what do? We make it federal. Within 24 hours, Vivian contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Colorado Attorney General's office. She presented Tobias's documents, the shell companies, the fraudulent debt instruments, the pattern across multiple victims. These aren't contract disputes, she told them. This is organized fraud. 3 days later, federal investigators arrived at Voss Meridian Holdings with a warrant. That night, Tobias sent me a message. He knows it was me. They're reviewing all my access logs. Be careful. I stared at my phone. Julian had tried to destroy me quietly. Now the federal government was asking questions he couldn't control. If you've ever been in a position where doing the right thing might cost you everything, where the person who hurt you had enough power to make you disappear, you already understand why this moment almost broke me. I had to choose between my company and the truth. Between protecting myself and protecting every woman who might come after me, between surviving and making sure Julian never did this again. What happened next didn't just change the case, it changed who I thought I was. Stay with me because the choice I made is one I still think about, and I need to know, what would you have done? Would you have settled to save everything you built, or would you have risked it all to expose the truth? Tell me in the comments, because even now, I'm not sure there was a right answer, just the one I could live with. The federal investigation moved faster than Julian's lawsuit. Subpoenas went out within days. Bank records, email servers, corporate documents. Julian's attorneys tried to delay, claiming the civil case should proceed first. The judge disagreed. 2 weeks later, I sat in a federal courthouse for a preliminary hearing to determine if there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. Julian sat 3 rows behind me with 2 attorneys. He looked calm, confident, like he still thought he could control this. Vivian stood and began presenting evidence. The prenup designed to claim my company, the unauthorized access to my financial records, the timeline document calling me an asset transfer, the recording of Julian's blackmail threat. Then she called Celeste to testify. Celeste walked to the stand and was sworn in. Julian's attorney immediately attacked her credibility. Ms. Rowan, isn't it true you were terminated from Voss Meridian Holdings for financial misconduct? I resigned. After a large sum of money went missing. After I discovered irregularities and tried to report them. Irregularities you participated in. Celeste didn't flinch. Irregularities I was coerced into facilitating. Yes, the attorney smirked. So you admit you helped commit fraud and now you're blaming Mr. Voss to avoid responsibility. Vivian stood. Your Honor, Ms. Rowan has provided documentation showing a pattern of financial manipulation spanning 6 years and involving multiple victims. Her testimony is corroborated by internal emails, financial records, and a witness from within Voss Meridian Holdings. The judge looked at Julian's attorney. Do you have evidence contradicting Ms. Rowan's timeline? We have character witnesses who will testify. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then Vivian presented the document I hadn't seen yet. She placed it on the overhead projector. It was a property deed from 4 years ago, a small commercial building I'd purchased in my company's first year. I'd almost forgotten about it. Your Honor, this property was purchased by Miss Hart's company in June 4 years ago, 3 months before she met Mr. Voss. She pulled up another document. This shows that Voss Meridian Holdings attempted to purchase the same property 2 months prior. The seller refused their offer. My chest tightened. Vivian continued. 2 weeks after Miss Hart's company acquired the property, Mr. Voss attended a charity auction where he allegedly met Miss Hart by accident. She projected an email on the screen, from Julian to his father, dated 1 week before the auction, subject line, new approach for Hart property acquisition. Body, personal relationship angle, will update. The courtroom went completely silent. I couldn't breathe. Even the first meeting, the champagne he'd spilled on my dress, the laugh, the 6 months he'd spent convincing me to give him a chance, all of it had been calculated. Vivian's voice was steady. Mr. Voss didn't fall in love with Miss Hart at a chance encounter. He researched her, identified her as the owner of a property his family wanted, and he targeted her. Julian's attorney stood. Objection, this is speculation. The judge looked at the email. It's an internal communication from the defendant to his father referencing Miss Hart by name 1 week before they allegedly met. Overruled. He turned to Vivian. Anything else? Yes, Your Honor. 6 additional victims have come forward with similar experiences. Property owners, business owners, all women, all targeted through personal relationships with members of the Voss family or their associates. The judge removed his glasses. I've seen enough. This case will proceed to trial. Mr. Voss's motion to dismiss is denied. Julian's face went white. For the first time since this started, he looked afraid. The trial began 6 weeks later. Julian was charged with wire fraud, conspiracy, and financial elder abuse. His father was charged as a co-conspirator. The prosecution presented everything. Tobias testified under immunity, explaining what he'd found in the company's systems. Celeste testified about her experience and the 2 women before me. Then the other victims came forward. 7 people total, elderly property owners who'd been pressured into selling, business owners who'd lost everything. One woman, Ruth Castellano, had sold her late husband's commercial property for half its value after being told it was financially distressed. The debt was fabricated. Ruth sat in the witness stand and told the jury how she'd blamed herself for years. I thought I'd just been stupid. I didn't know it was deliberate. Julian's attorneys tried to discredit everyone. They called it a conspiracy. They suggested I'd coordinated false testimonies. They claimed Julian was a successful businessman being targeted by bitter ex-partners. But they couldn't explain the documents, the emails, the timeline, the shell companies. When it was my turn to testify, Julian's attorney tried to rattle me. Ms. Hart, isn't it true you only came forward after Mr. Voss ended your relationship? He didn't end it. I cancelled the wedding after he brought another woman into our home. You were jealous. I was suspicious. You wanted revenge. I wanted to understand what I'd missed. The attorney leaned forward. And when you realized Mr. Voss had moved on, you decided to destroy him. I looked directly at the jury. When I realized Julian had done this to other women, I decided no one else should go through what we went through. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Julian was found guilty on 4 counts. His father was found guilty on 3. Sentencing was scheduled for 8 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked if I felt vindicated. I didn't know how to answer, because Julian's conviction didn't give me back the 4 years I'd lost. It didn't erase the nights I'd spent wondering if I'd imagined the warning signs. It didn't undo the damage to my company or my reputation. But it did something else. It made the pattern visible. It gave the other victims a name for what had happened to them, and it meant Julian couldn't do this again. That night, Celeste sent me a message. Thank you. 2 words. But they carried the weight of 3 years she'd spent afraid. I didn't respond right away. I just sat in my apartment looking at the message, thinking about how strange it was that the woman who'd stood in my bedroom had become the person who helped me fight back. Sometimes your enemy isn't who you think. Sometimes they're just the only person who knows where the truth is buried. Sentencing day came on a cold morning in February. Julian received 4 years in federal prison. His father received 2 years plus restitution payments to the victims. Voss Meridian Holdings was ordered to pay damages. I received a settlement that covered my legal fees and the balloon payment on my loan. My company survived. Barely, but it survived. Julian's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he could never refile it. The frozen account was released. Clients slowly returned once the news coverage showed what had really happened. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office when I received a letter. No return address. I opened it. It was from Julian, not an apology, an explanation. He wrote that he'd never intended to hurt me. He'd just seen an opportunity. He claimed he did care about me in his own way. He said if I'd just signed the prenup, none of this would have happened. He called the trial unnecessary. The final line, "You could have had everything. You chose to burn it down instead." I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer and never responded, because I finally understood something. Julian would never see what he'd done wrong. To him, the crime wasn't the betrayal, it was getting caught. I met Celeste for coffee a week later. She'd moved to Portland, started working for a financial ethics nonprofit. She looked different, lighter. "I spent 3 years afraid," she said. "You gave me my life back." "You gave me the truth. We're even," she smiled. "Are we friends now?" I thought about it. This woman who'd walked into my bedroom, who I'd hated, who'd become the only person who truly understood what Julian had done. "Yeah, I think we are." Before we left, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you regret it, fighting instead of walking away?" I thought about the company I'd saved, the women who'd come forward, the pattern that was now broken. I thought about Julian's letter and the version of myself that might have believed him. No, because walking away would have meant he was right about me. And he never was. Months passed. My company grew. I hired 2 new employees. Tobias and I stayed in touch, unlikely friends bonded by the truth we'd both chosen. I dated someone briefly, then ended it when I realized I wasn't ready. And one evening, sitting in my office reviewing contracts, I thought about the question Nadia had asked months ago. If you could go back, would you still say yes when Julian proposed? The answer was complicated. No, I wouldn't. But I needed to say yes then to become who I am now, because the greatest power reversal wasn't watching Julian lose his freedom. It was realizing he'd never actually had power over who I was, only who I thought I needed to be. He expected me to beg. Instead, I built a case. He expected me to break. Instead, I found witnesses. He expected me to disappear. Instead, I walked into court and told the truth. And the woman who stood in my bedroom that night, she became the person who helped me prove that sometimes your enemy isn't there to destroy you. They're there because they're the only one who knows where the bodies are buried. You just have to survive long enough to trust them. Marielle's story reminded me why I started Velvet Novel, because the most powerful stories aren't about perfect revenge. They're about women who were underestimated, betrayed, or dismissed, and who found their power anyway. Not because they wanted to destroy someone, because they refused to let someone else define their worth. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of a moment when you chose yourself even though it was terrifying, or if you're still trying to figure out whether you should fight or walk away, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to Velvet Novel, because every story I share is about women who discovered that the power was always theirs. They just had to stop giving it away. And tell me in the comments, do you think Marielle should have forgiven Julian, or was refusing to forgive the most powerful choice she could make? Because I think the answer says everything about who we choose to become after betrayal.